What's good, Atlanta? This is the Blog and Dirty Podcast, where Dirty Bird is the word if you haven't heard. I'm your host, John Buhler, staff writer, fansided.com. Coming to you guys the day before Christmas, live, a little bit before noon Eastern on on Christmas Eve. Yeah. If you're at that point of the year where you have no idea what day or time it is, I'm right there with you, brother and sister. Yes, the Atlanta Falcons have won not just one game in a row, but two games in a row. For the first time since 2017, since before I worked at Fansided full time, we've won 8 games in a season. Can't lose the last two because if you do that, you're not making the playoffs, and more importantly, you're not going to have a winning season. And that'd be really cool to have that. But yes, I had to move some schedule stuff around to coming to you guys live right now on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. And then after New Year's Day, a bunch of college football stuff that I got to be covering. I'll be coming to you on the 2nd to recap the Washington Commanders game and then previewing the regular season finale versus the Carolina Panthers part 2. We beat them in Charlotte previously, a game that was a little bit close for comfort, but these two next games are very important. Probably going to talk to you guys for about 30, 40 minutes or so, but it's me, so I might ramble. But yes, this is the Blog and Dirty Podcast where Dirty Bird is the word if you haven't heard. So let's get started with the first topic today. Let's do some vibe check. How are we feeling about the Atlanta Falcons right now? I got to be honest, this is the best I felt in about a month or two with this team. As I was watching this team fall to pieces after Halloween, really having the Monday night game at the Raiders and then having the early Sunday afternoon kick at home versus the Giants, finally the Falcons got some breaks with their scheduling. Their schedule was challenging at the start, and it kept getting harder and harder and harder. I mean, I don't think we really envisioned the Chargers and the Broncos being playoff teams in the AFC West this year. We knew what Kansas City was capable of. Obviously, the teams we drew out of competitive balance with the Seahawks and the Steelers and the Vikings, I believe. Yes, those are all like teams that are either in the playoffs or are fighting for it, like we are with Seattle right now. So the schedule's been tough. This team has dealt with injuries in some capacity. They've dealt with really bad quarterback play, a brand new coaching staff. But we got the win last week over the Raiders, and we got the win on Sunday over the Giants with Michael Penix Jr. starting. So Atlanta's 8-7. And if they win their next two games, it's going to be a very exciting January for us here in Dirty Bird Nation. Something we haven't seen, since 2016, a home playoff game. The last home playoff game this team played was the final game played at the Georgia Dome back in the 2016, the NFC Championship game. It was so nice to close that stadium out with a win, probably one of the best wins in Falcons franchise history. We all know what came later. We don't need to talk about that. But I would say after watching the Falcons play these two bottom feeders in the league in Las Vegas and New York, I saw them win in multiple ways. I saw versus the Raiders, it's like, look, we can't lose to this sorry, sad back of crap Raiders team versus our former starting quarterback in Desmond Ridder. Kirk Cousins was either played terribly or was basically just completely neutered in the situation. They're like, we're not going to let you ruin this game for us like you did versus the Vikings, and you absolutely did versus the Chargers. So took the ball out of his hands. They played a ball control game. They won with defense. Pass rush has gotten a lot better. I'll give Jimmy Lake and his side of the ball a lot of credit there. I think that we're seeing that Raheem Morris has been able to, inject some life into the pass rush. Arnold Ebiketie is playing a lot better. Had some fantastic plays this past week. 2 sacks. I think he had a sack and a fumble recovery. Cade Ellis is playing out of his mind. He's become very much a fan favorite. Matthew Judon was able to intercept the pass that Drew Lock threw into Zach Harris's hands and took it back for 6 points. When this Falcons defense is playing up to its ability, it can force turnovers. You got Jesse Bates, who's just a constant threat to, punch the ball out or take it to the house like he did versus Drew Lock. Obviously I know that like Justin Simmons is kind of like, you don't see him that much because he's basically neutralizing the back end. AJ Terrell, like the less you hear about them, the better. That's kind of the assessment I have there with the Falcons secondary. But as I'm watching this team, you're starting to see a team that like, okay, we may or may not make the playoffs this year, but next year this is a team that seems to be trending in the right direction. I understand that in all likelihood the Falcons are probably going to cut Kirk Cousins because he's due a $10 million roster bonus, I believe, on St. Patrick's Day. So right when the league year starts, they're going to have to make some changes there. He'll probably go the Russell Wilson route where the Falcons will eat the roughly the 40 million he's being paid next year. They'll get out of the deal after 2026. And then wherever he signs, it could be, the Titans, it could be the Raiders, the Browns, the 49ers, whomever at this point. Like, it'll be offsetting. So like whatever they pay Cousins will take into what the Falcons have to eat in terms of a dead cap. It sucks to do that, but like the good news in all this is like Penix is already under a rookie contract. He has 4 more years of control beyond this year. Like that includes the 5th-year option. You could also tag him, which Atlanta typically doesn't do. They try to extend guys beforehand. So Atlanta's not going to be in that bad of a financial situation, but really how well Penix plays down the stretch is going to determine if Terry Fontenot keeps his job. I think Raheem Morris is safe. He has to be. Otherwise, this job becomes toxic. I don't think he's the issue. Fontenot's made some very interesting draft picks over the years. Some have been huge hits, like Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Clearly look like Michael Penix is going to be a hit as well. Kyle Pitts has been incredibly frustrating. But then you've also got guys like Jalen Mayfield who aren't even on the team anymore. I don't really see Richie Grant playing very much. And is anybody really making an impact from the rookie class this year beyond Penix? And I'll just leave it at that. So right now, for the first time in a while, or it's been fleeting, there is a lot of positivity around the Falcons. I think like winning a game where, a lesser team would have lost to the Raiders, where it just wasn't going your way, that was a sign of positivity. And I think more importantly, just beating the absolute tar out of the worst team in the league and the New York Giants at your place, that was good. That was a way to build confidence and momentum heading into the most important game of your season. So we've got the Washington Commanders on Sunday Night Football. I think what is it called? Northwest Stadium. It's not FedEx anymore. It's not RFK. I think it's Northwest. So you're playing Dan Quinn's team. You're playing the team quarterbacked by Jaden Daniels. Cliff Kingsbury is the OC. Commanders have a lot of positivity going in their direction right now because, they've got an owner who cares. Kind of distracted you from how terrible the Philadelphia 76ers are there in the NBA side of things. But Josh Harris seems the doubles are starting to turn up, I think. Or they have players that I know about, and the Commanders are starting to really turn things up there too. So yes, feeling pretty good heading into the holiday season for sure. So very thankful that the Atlanta Falcons have been at least an exciting team to follow this year and cover. Fun to root for, painful to root for at the same time. It's not bland, it's not boring. It's a team that has the national level of intrigue. Again, we're looking for kind of like that next team on the come up after the Lions have kind of were that. Now they've arrived. We're kind of wondering who the next team would be. Hopefully it's us. So that's how I'm feeling about the Falcons right now. We're going to inject ourselves with some big Penix energy. Moving on to our next topic here. My thoughts on Michael Penix Jr.'s first career start for the Giants and what can we expect versus the Commanders. He played well. He didn't have a touchdown, even though he had a pick, because Kyle Pitts is just completely mailing it in. I don't really know what he's doing anymore. I think everybody who had a pick in the top 4 of the 2021 NFL draft just made a huge mistake. Trevor Lawrence isn't that good. We know Zach Wilson's terrible. We know Trey Lance is awful. Kyle Pitts is not Brock Bowers, and we just leave it at that. But with Penix's first start, you saw him go in there. You saw him, okay, I'm going to put some zip on the ball. We haven't seen a quarterback with a howitzer like his since Michael Vick, in all honesty. Again, that wasn't necessarily part of Matt Ryan or Kirk Cousins' game or Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota or really anybody we've had up to this point, Taylor Heineke, who played quarterback, Matt Shaw briefly, I guess. But like nobody else like really could really spin it like Penix. I mean, he's putting balls into tight windows. I think a lot of the receivers are not necessarily what's what I'm looking for, used to how hard of a ball he throws. I mean, they'll probably get used to it more with the more first team reps he gets. Cousins, that was kind of an issue with him. And I think that was really the biggest thing. He just had no zip on that ball, probably because he can't really drive with his legs because he's got 1.5 Achilles. I feel terrible for him. I mean, I had an arm injury growing up. I can't really throw a baseball very hard anymore. So, your miles per hour, your RPMs just go down considerably. But as I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is a team that I think wants them to succeed so incredibly badly. I don't know how supportive Kirk Cousins is going to be down the stretch. Can't really blame him, but that's neither here nor there. I feel like Cousins was kind of becoming a liability at this point for the Falcons, very much so. Whereas with Penix, you're starting with a clean slate. You're starting with you have a new start at some point. What made him special at Washington and Indiana before that. Also, it's going to be interesting to see on Sunday night how he introduced himself. Is he going to say Michael Penix Jr., Washington, or UW, IU, some combinations? Because he's just going to talk about being from Tampa. I don't know what he's going to say, but he's going to be introduced, as part of the Sunday Night Football broadcast. I mean, probably the same sort of thing with Jay Daniels, who has 2 schools. Obviously, he'll say LSU because Arizona State was not that great when he was there, and he was sensational for the Bayou Bengals. But as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about Penix and what he did in his first start, he looked fearless out there. He didn't look like timid. I didn't feel like that Zach Robinson was like really hiding stuff in the playbook from him. It's like, okay, you can do this. We'll steal a little bit more. Okay, maybe we can't do that. Let's pull back a little bit. There seemed to be some level of competence there. Like, one of the issues that was existing with Cousins was it became like a paradox, if you will. Cousins is at his best playing under center, so he could use the play action to his advantage. Because we run a Sean McVay-based offense, which, interesting enough, Kevin O'Connell did, you have 11 personnel. You don't really have the ability to line up under center. And also the fact that Cousins is dealing with an Achilles sort of injury, that creates some problems as well. Not being able to move back as much, not allowing the passing lanes to open up as much as they should with the threat of play action. But with Penix, he can move a little bit. Again, he's not going to be like running all over the place. The quarterback who I think kind of plays like him a little bit. There's a little bit of that scamper there with Burrow and Deshaun Watson, maybe Carson Beck at Georgia, although he just had a UCL injury repaired. So guys who can move a little bit, but that's not going to be a focal point of their game where it is with like Jaden Daniels, who we're going to be seeing on Sunday night. But as I try to put a bow on how I feel about Penix's first start versus the Giants, this was the right time to insert him into the equation. I felt like you couldn't have done it any sooner. Maybe you could have done it after the Vikings game, but it wouldn't have mattered because, well, the Raiders were still a bottom feeder. You want to give Cousins like one last shot to kind of redeem himself, maybe go out on somewhat of a high note with a win in primetime. I guess that's kind of what happened there. But again, we needed to bat down 2 Hail Marys, and I think Jesse Bates picked it off in the end zone to win. I mean, should have beaten the Raiders like 31-7, whereas they beat the Giants like 34-7. I think that's what the final score was. But we have Penix in there now. I feel that like they're moving the direction with him going forward. That's it for Cousins. Unless Penix gets hurt during the final 2 weeks or during the playoff run, that'll probably be the last we see of Cousins be playing in an Atlanta Falcons uniform. The rest of the league knows this. So nobody else is going to do any favors with the Falcons. More importantly, Cousins is not going to do any favors. He's got a no-trade clause baked into his contract. Again, everybody's like, okay, why would Terry Fontenot make this stupid deal? I'm like, well, we had Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke for the previous 2 years. This was still better than that. And, you got to get some guarantees in there for a quarterback of Cousins' caliber or a quarterback with the representation that Cousins does. He wasn't going to come if you didn't give him like essentially that. So that's just part of doing business here. This is big time football with big time agents and everything like that. So that's what it took to get him here. And it worked out well for about 10 games or so. And the final 4 that he started were terrible. And well, there were some highs there. I think mostly we should be thankful for Cousins playing so well versus the Buccaneers, because that puts us in a position to where we could potentially make the playoffs. So as far as what we can expect out of Penix in his second career start versus the Commanders, I'm a little nervous. I don't like that field. That's a field where people get hurt. It's pretty much the same thing in everything in the NFC East, namely namely MetLife and Nationwide Stadium or whatever. I think as long as the Falcons can run the football effectively with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and doing just enough in the receiving game with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, and maybe Kyle Pitts gets his head out of his ass, like that would be fantastic. I think it's going to be a game where the offensive line has to be really, really, really locked in because up or down, like even when the Commanders have been terrible, they've always had really good players in the trenches along the defensive line. That's kind of an area of strength for them. So Atlanta has a better than average offensive line. It hasn't been as good as I thought it would be at the start, but it's getting better. It's not a weakness by any means, but it's certainly not like the driving force for everything here. I think getting Penix to throw a touchdown early would be tremendous for him. If not, like it may get in his head. He may get a little more conservative and everything like that. That kind of was an issue with Ritter initially. I don't think he threw a touchdown until like the second two games of his starting tenure with the Falcons at the end of 22. But yeah, basically Zach Robinson and Michael Penix Jr. need to come up with a fantastic game plan to allow the Falcons to move the sticks consistently versus a very good Washington team. After the Falcons game versus the Giants, the Fox broadcast went over to like the final few minutes of the Commanders-Eagles game, and it looked like the Commanders were trying to do everything in their power to give that game away. Daniels turned the ball over a lot. I think they turned the ball over 5 times in that game, and I think they ended up winning like a last-second touchdown. So that game certainly impacts a lot of playoff positioning because with the Packers winning last night over the Saints, who are absolutely pitiful, they're the second team who's in the wild card. So right now we know that Philadelphia is in the playoffs. We know that Detroit, we know Minnesota, we know Green Bay. I think those are the 4 that are definitively in. Atlanta and Tampa are still duking it out, and Seattle and Los Angeles, Washington, yeah. But yeah, Washington's right there too. So like I don't think Washington is going to win the NFC East, but they're very much looking like they're going to be somewhere like the 6 or 7 seed if they take care of business in the final 2 weeks of the season, which includes take care of business against us. I don't know. It might happen. We'll see how that goes. But again, these are Penix versus Daniels. These are the kind of marquee matchups you're hoping for with the next up-and-coming stars in this league. So I'm really excited for that. So that's enough about Penix right now. We have enough big Penix energy going through our veins right now. Let's move on to playoffs. You kidding me? Yeah, so I'll be very brief here. What does Atlanta need to do to make the playoffs? To put it as simply as I can, they need to win one more game. No, they need to win their final 2 games. They need to beat the Commanders, and then they need to beat the Panthers at home. If they lose a game, then they need to hope that the Buccaneers lose. So like if the Buccaneers win their final 2 games over the Panthers and Saints, and we lose to either the Commanders or the Panthers, they'll win the division over us. It's kind of become an interesting sort of thing where Washington essentially needs one more win, either versus Atlanta, and I forget who they play. I think they finished with Dallas. Yeah, they finished with Dallas. So if the Commanders beat the Falcons or the Cowboys, they're going to be in. They're going to basically prevent a team like Seattle, Atlanta, or Tampa Bay, or maybe even LA. I think that LA is 9-6. They're going to prevent them from getting in as a wild card team. So like if the Falcons beat the Commanders, then that really eliminates the Buccaneers' chances of getting in as a wild card team. No matter what happens with the Panthers or the Saints for them, as long as the Falcons finish with the same record or better than the Buccaneers, they're going to get in, and they're going to have their first home playoff game since 2016. Make the playoffs for the first time since 2017. Maybe we'll get our first playoff win since 2017 as well. Should have had 2, but 4th and Sark happened in Philadelphia, and this is the Blog Dirty podcast. I think the wild card component of it all is interesting. Atlanta does own the head-to-head tiebreaker versus Philadelphia for whatever that whatever that matters in the end. They do not have it versus Minnesota, and they do not have it versus Seattle. So that could be problematic as well. Obviously, the Falcons don't play the Packers this year. But as I'm sitting here, I'm like, if you just take care of business and you just win your final two games, you're going to have the number 4 seed and you're going to have a home playoff game. You could maybe get as high as the 3, depending on what happens there in the NFC West with Los Angeles and Seattle. But you're looking to be playing a home game. If you win the division, you're going to have a home game versus either the Packers or the Vikings. Oh, it could be ugly. It could be a really bad game. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was versus the Broncos earlier this season, or as bad as it was versus the Vikings a couple weeks ago, but that's within the realm of possibility. Again, it's all about getting into the playoffs. I wrote an article for fansided.com a couple of days ago about teams who are on the fringe of making the playoffs, who are probably better served not making it in heading into next year. And I considered the Falcons, but I saw that their percentage of probability of getting in was just too high at that point. For me to really cross them off. I think it was like 31% heading into the Giants game, and it went up to like 55 after a win this past week. The Buccaneers have a 51% chance of getting in. I think the Seahawks is like in the teens. So I forget where the Rams are as well, but the Commanders is like 97% or better at this point. So I did not say the Falcons needed to miss the playoffs; they would benefit because they'd have a worse draft pick. I feel that the playoff experience, the exposure of that for not just the players, I think the fans deserve that. I think the coaches deserve that. I think Arthur Blank deserves that. I think just getting in there and having one home playoff game is a huge positive heading into 2025, the year where I think Atlanta really needs to make headway. Look, if we end up being like the Detroit Lions 2 years ago, where they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs heading into their final game versus the Packers, but they still won anyway. They were the best team that didn't make the playoffs that year, playing with a lot of positive momentum. They really carried into last year, and they should have gone to the Super Bowl. They probably would have won. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, but the Lions are one of the best teams in football right now. I don't know if we're going to get to that level. I don't know if that's what our ceiling is. I don't know if that's what our destiny is, but that's kind of a pattern of what the Lions have done over the last few years is kind of what I hope happens to us. Again, they're going to get poached to hell from coordinators. Ben Johnson's going to be a head coach. He's probably going to take the stupid Bears job and get fired in 3 years because he's a moron for taking that job. Just go somewhere better. I think Aaron Glenn is going to have plenty of opportunities as a defensive coordinator to be a head coach, namely because the team he starred for, the Jets, has an opening, and a team he used to coach with Dan Campbell and Sean Payton's staff in New Orleans will be opening up as well. So he might be coming in the division too. So I think the chances of the Falcons getting in as a wild card are quite slim. You need to beat the Commanders. The Commanders need to lose to I don't know how that would work. You'd have to beat the Commanders, and then you'd have to lose to the Panthers, and then you need the Buccaneers to win the next 2 games, and maybe you get in. Again, it seems like division or bust at this point for the Falcons. I'm not going to really waste any more time trying to figure that out, but the Falcons control their own destiny. If they beat the Commanders and they beat the Panthers, they're in. If they don't beat both of those teams, that's going to be problematic unless the Buccaneers lose to the Panthers or Saints, which I'm not counting on because they're going to be playing with a crashing sense of urgency, particularly with how tough of a loss that was on Sunday Night Football last week versus the Cowboys. That was a huge help for us, and we got to take advantage of it, but we're also the Falcons, and we know what we're capable of, and we don't always do that. We don't do very well when taking advantage of things. We don't always do very well in revenge games, and yeah, we got one of those coming up right here. Moving on to the next topic here with About the Ball. We're playing the guy who started that phrase in Atlanta with our former head coach, Dan Quinn, fellow birthday brother. I always knew that when he got his second opportunity to be a head coach, he would take advantage of it. Look, I think he's a fantastic defensive mind. His status as defensive coordinator with both Seattle and Dallas proves me right there. As a head coach, he had some stuff he needed to learn. He always has a really good eye for talent in terms of his coaches. Like, I feel that all the offensive coordinators we had under him, from Kyle Shanahan, Steve Sarkisian, Dirk Cutter, those are all big names in the football world, people that have a lot of respect for them at multiple levels and across the board. Like, those are really good minds. Uh, couldn't get a pass rush, even though he was defensive line specialist. That's what he did. Obviously, Raheem Morris was on that under his coaching tree as well. He's taking over a bit too. So uh, I'm sort of happy to see Dan Quinn have success in Washington, but like right now, I don't care about that. We need to beat his ass. And I know he got the revenge on the Falcons when he was the defensive coordinator. I think his first year with the Cowboys. I think it's time that we turn the table here. I think Washington kind of got lucky versus the Eagles last week, and Atlanta just dominated the Giants. So it's a huge high stakes game. They flexed this out of Dolphins Browns because of how good the Commanders are being and how the playoffs are kind of breaking. The playoff likelihood is breaking in Atlanta's favor to create a compelling matchup. So we got a really cool NFC game. Although I'm not going to be doing guys remembering dudes this week. This is one of the teams that I feel historically just has a lot of crossovers between Falcons and Washington, whatever previous machination they were, the football team, whatnot beforehand. So, like, obviously Dan Quinn's coached at both. Obviously Kyle Shanahan coached at both. Raheem Morris coached at both. D'Angelo Hall played for both. Kirk Cousins played for both. Who was a former defensive coordinator? Jack Barrett, he offensive coordinator, he was on Joe Gibbs' staff back in the day. My high school friend Billy, that's his uncle. So yeah, that was that's part of it too. There's other stuff too. I'll probably remember like other Washington and Falcons crossovers too. Chris Chester, another Falcons legend. There's going to be more. I'm going to keep thinking about it. Like, this is the one that I'm like, I wish this would have been a really great one to have like a kind of overlap here. But obviously with the game being played like during Christmas week, like that's going to be challenging trying to do schedule and everything like that. So I'm able to carve out time. It's hard to ask me to have somebody say, hey, you want to come on my show and do something a little bit before noon, day before Christmas, asking people to like spend time away from their families, from rapping, buying presents, cooking food, drinking alcohol. I mean, those are all good things, but I'm happy to bring this to you guys because I'm very excited about this game. And I don't know if we're going to win. I'm pretty nervous about this, but in the season of believing, I think we're going to get it done. I think we're going to win the game something like 27-23. There's going to be a turnover. That's really the big thing. I think that Washington's going to turn the ball over. I don't think they're going to get it quite out of their system. It's like they had one of those perfect games where like they had so many things to clean up on tape, but they got the win. Huge opportunity. But again, I don't feel they have the same crashing sense of urgency as Atlanta does. If Washington loses to Atlanta and then they beat Dallas next week, they're in. And honestly, they could probably lose the next two games and they've still got a pretty good chance of getting in. I think maybe like if they lost their next two and then again, I don't know if I forget how the Buccaneers-Commanders game went earlier this season. So I'll look at this. Because I have Buccaneers, Commanders. Okay, the Bucs won. So like, okay, so maybe that's how Atlanta and Tampa Bay both get in. Like, if the Commanders lose out, which would require them losing to Dallas, Atlanta and Tampa went out, then maybe they both get in over the Commanders. That'd be insane. Like in that situation, like Yeah, in that situation, Atlanta would win the NFC South, and the Buccaneers would probably be like the 7th seed. Because the Buccaneers didn't play the Seahawks. We did. They played. I think they played the Rams. Again, I'm trying to keep everything straight here. It's so difficult trying to cover two different college football and pro, and try to remember everything from like a national landscape, and also try to bring the hard-hitting insight from a team that I love and cover and everything like that. But yeah, I'm sitting here with the Commanders, and I'm thinking they've got a really good offense. Cliff Kingsbury is going to get another opportunity to be an NFL head coach soon. Probably not this offseason, but in time it will happen. I don't know if he'll succeed again. But he's better than Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley just interviews better, and at least Cliff Kingsbury is not afraid. He's like, okay, I failed at my alma mater. I got an opportunity to go to the Arizona Cardinals. I had success. Didn't work out, but he probably learned a lot from that too. Being able to rebound pretty quickly, with a coordinator role of sorts with USC. Interestingly enough, on Lincoln Riley's staff because the Texas Tech of it all is too strong. And then he obviously goes to Washington. Dan Quinn picked him. Dan Quinn trusts him. Dan Quinn's had a really good eye for offensive talent from his coordinator position. So even if Kingsbury gets another opportunity somewhere else, he'll find another SC. He always did. Again, like I've said, like 4 really good coordinators who have all served under Dan Quinn at various times over the last decade. So, but anyway, it's going to come down to the trenches. It always does. I think it's going to come down to ball security. It's going to come down to the Atlanta Falcons offensive line holding up versus a very good defensive line of the Commanders. I feel like you could take advantage of the secondary and linebacking core there defensively with Washington. This is going to be a big opportunity for Drake London. I know he had a hamstring thing. I think in the post game, Raheem Morris said like if he could have played if he needed to, but obviously because like Atlanta was up so big and they know we need him for these next 2 games, the game was already out of reach. No reason to mess around with that. I am a little concerned about Riley Patterson as a kicker over Younghoe Koo. Obviously, he went on IR, but the Falcons, I used to always trust their kicking, but this year it just hasn't been the same. I'm thankful for Koo having a fantastic game versus the Saints first time, and then he had a terrible game. This is the way the cookie crumbles. For Atlanta to win, Penix needs to have like a big player too, to kind of counter the several that Jaden Daniels will do. And I think that Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson are going to have to play probably their best game of the season combined. I also think that we're going to need pressure from the pass rush. I think if we can sack Jaden Daniels 3 times, have pressure in his face, that could, create a long down and distance, probably force a kill a drive, get the ball back, have an opportunity to take advantage. Daniels is very quick of foot. He's also very slender. I remember, you've seen on my show, like when I'm back in my apartment, I've got Jalen Carter holding him up like a baby in the SEC championship and back in 22, like when he was at LSU. Like he's a fantastic player. So much fun to watch. We'll talk about the quarterbacks here from the 2024 first round draft class here in a second, but like there are opportunities to take advantage of Washington. I had a feeling at the start of the year they were going to go after a slow start and then really hit it into high gear in the second half. They've been pretty much strong the whole time. This is a team that I felt like could be pushing for a playoff. I think I had them like winning like 8 or 9 games, and they've won 10. And if they win 11, they're in. And that's exciting. I don't know if they're necessarily going to go worst to first, but like they did get the head-to-head win over the Eagles. See if did they complete the season sweep of them? Again, I don't really remember all these things. Eagles, Commanders. Let's see. Washington Commanders. They won, going all the way back. Commanders. The Eagles won the previous one, 26-18, back in the middle of November. So again, they've completed the series split, like kind of what we do with the Saints. We need to complete the series sweep of the Buccaneers, the Panthers, like we do with the Buccaneers. Need to finish 5-1 in division to get in. I've had a lot of guys on my fantasy football teams from Washington this year. I've had Zach Ertz, I've had Brian Robinson, I've had Terry McLaurin. They've got weapons. For like every guy that we have, they have another guy too. I think the home field advantage, being playing out in prime time in the elements, probably helps. But then again, even though Penix is from Tampa and plays in Atlanta, he did play in Bloomington, Indiana, and Seattle, Washington throughout his college career. So he's more used to this than you would think. So my cousins played like in Washington. Obviously, he played college football at Michigan State and then played in 2 domes. But this isn't like Matt Ryan, like, okay, I just suck north in Mason-Dixon line, even though he's from Philadelphia, which I always found really odd. He played his worst games versus the Eagles, which I never really understood. That's why Fletcher Cox needs to be in the Hall of Fame. That guy's a game changer. So, like I said, I feel like we're going to win something like 27-23. mostly because I think Atlanta needs this game more than Washington does. Washington could still get in with other teams losing, and if they just beat the Cowboys, which at that point we don't really know. The Cowboys are already out of it. They played really hard for Mike McCarthy. His secondary played fantastically for their cornerbacks coach Al Harris. Like, really impressed with how the Cowboys did. Thank you for that. To my boss, colleague at Fall Star co-host Cody Williams, that I really appreciated that for Christmas with the Cowboys. He's like, I just want to get rid of Mike McCarthy. Like, fair enough. But yeah, as I try to put a bow on this with the Falcons at the Commanders, we're not going to be the favorite here, but for the sake of belief, being excited about this team, maybe because we just beat two dog water teams in the Raiders and Giants consecutively, we're facing a team who's a little bit better than us. I'd probably say that, a little more consistent. If you want to make the playoffs, you got to win this game, and then you got to hold serve, beat a team you should beat in the Panthers. And if you can't do that, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So just go for it. Go for the kill. Rise up. And I'm going to move on to our penultimate topic here with that's my quarterback. Yes. Trying to figure out an interesting way to round out this show today. I could have done around the perimeter. I'm like, nah, not really feeling that too much. That's probably a good episode next week. May or may not have a guest on. Trying to figure out the schedule of it all. Again, I'll be coming to you January 2nd on Thursday for that game ahead of the Panthers game. The January 1st will be the longest day of my life. Me and my girlfriend, who's an Arizona State alum, we're going to the Peach Bowl to see Arizona State play Texas, and then obviously I cover the Rose Bowl and then the Sugar Bowl afterwards with my Georgia Bulldogs. So not working on the second, but I will be doing a show. I may be hella beat up, but that's okay. A lot of people are after game day anyway. But with that's my quarterback, that's kind of want to have some thoughts about the 6 guys taken, in the top 12. So for those of you who don't remember completely, we had Caleb Williams out of USC go number 1 to the Chicago Bears. Jaden Daniels, the other Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, he was at LSU, won it last year. He went number 2 to the Commanders. The third quarterback taken was Drake May. Yes, the North Carolina quarterback went to the Patriots at 3. Team's not good. He's showing some promise. Michael Penix Jr., the pick by the Atlanta Falcons, number 8, took the Washington quarterback, the Maxwell Award winner, Heisman runner-up, at number 8. I believe at 10, the Minnesota Vikings moved up like a spot from 11 to 10 to draft J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. He looked like okay, I guess, maybe not really that great. In his first preseason game, he got hurt, has missed the entire year, but Sam Darnold's played so well that doesn't matter. And then Bo Chapman-Nix, the Oregon quarterback by way of Auburn, went to the Broncos. A lot of people hated on that pick, including me. Maybe not to the degree of others. I always knew he was kind of capable of this. He's played very well for a playoff caliber team, the Denver Broncos. So let's talk about the quarterbacks. I would say the 2 best quarterbacks who have played this season a lot are Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. Again, these are guys that had been in college for 5 years. They had transferred. Jaden Daniels had been at Arizona State and finished up his final 2 years at LSU. Bo Nix spent his first 3 years at his father's alma mater of Auburn, and then finished up his final 2 years at Oregon. They became better quarterbacks at their second opportunities. Jaden Daniels was fun, but the Herm Edwards of it all, it was kind of like disjointed. I remember Jaden Daniels had a really good freshman year, but then it kind of stalled out there a little bit. He played a lot better for Brian Kelly. Mike Denbrock was his OC. He started to do things there with Notre Dame. I'm nervous about that because that's who Georgia plays on New Year's Day with Riley Leonard and the Fighting Irish. And then Bo Nix, I kind of always felt at Auburn that like it was a nepotism thing. Like he played for Gus Malzahn initially. Malzahn got fired. They brought in Brian Harsin. That thing got toxic. He then followed, I think, Kenny Dillingham to who was his quarterback's coach or OC to Oregon, played for Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning scouted him at Auburn when he was at Georgia on Kirby Smart's staff. Had a lot of respect for him. I kind of felt that Bo Nix, he got dumped on a lot. I kind of felt that like anybody could have been a quarterback there in Oregon. But seeing Dylan Gabriel replace him kind of leads me to believe that Bo Nix is just a better player. Bo Nix is more physical, better runner, uh, just a better overall pro player. I guess we kind of overlooked that a little bit. Like we saw what Bo Nix was doing at Oregon is what we wish Justin Herbert could have done at Oregon, but Mario Cristobal is an idiot. yeah, good job not beating Syracuse, bud. But those two have been the best, and I think it's a combination of adversity in college, a lot of starts in college, and I think going to places where the coaching staff really believes in them. I think it's a case obviously with Washington with Jay Daniels. They were pretty excited about having the 2 pick. I know Washington kind of like played flirt, like, oh, maybe we'll move down. I think Dan Quinn's like, no, don't be stupid. Cliff Kingsbury's like, is this guy good? He's like, oh hell yeah, so let's go get him. And I think the Commanders and people who hail to the Commanders and Washington, they are better for it now. So that's tremendous. And I would say particularly with Bo Nix with the Broncos, Sean Payton believed in him. Sean Payton believed in him quite a lot, and better, probably more so than anybody. And again, put him in advantageous positions to succeed. The Broncos were dog poo last year. Like Russell Wilson was just terrible. For whatever reason, that was just oil and water. Russell Wilson's had success playing for Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. So yeah, Denver, that was the one loss this year. I'm like, this is horrible. Like I had to turn the game off halfway through. It was so bad. The Broncos have had a longer playoff drought than we have by 2 years. So theirs is probably ending. They finally have a team worth rooting for, which unfortunately makes the one of the most aggravating fan bases in the sport. The Broncos really chirpy, and can't wait for that. But yeah, those have been the 2 best quarterbacks by far. Next up are the 2 other guys who have played a lot, but it's kind of been mixed reviews. Caleb Williams with the Bears and Drake May with the Patriots. Caleb Williams, they fired Matt Eberflus. It's my dog Thomas Brown as the interim. It's not working out. Drake May is playing for a guy who got promoted from within for some really stupid reason. It doesn't make any sense. The Kraft's like, let's get rid of Bill Belichick and let's promote Gerard Mayo from within. That's not working out. I gotta be really honest with you. It's a lot better of a situation for Drake May right now. I feel like, again, ownership. I understand Robert Kraft's getting up there in age, but we'll see what happens when Jonathan Kraft takes over. But the Patriots have shown that like they can build a dynasty, like in the era of the internet and Twitter and social media and everything like that. And the Bears have shown me that like they're forever stuck in 1985. As long as the McCaskies are the team, that franchise is going to be a dead franchise. More importantly, and more unfortunately, I had my real concerns about Caleb Williams' personality, attitude, and everything like that. His dad asked for equity in the Bears. Like, are you an idiot? Like, you can't do that. Like, that's like insider trading. You can't buy a stake in the team you're playing for. This isn't some Jackie Moon semi-pro nonsense. And then you're also dealing with the fact that like he cried on the field away from his teammates, paints his fingernails, says stuff on there like that. Everyone's like, oh, he's just fun. It's like, well, he didn't win enough games. And I think that, like, I don't think he's one of the guys. I don't think the people in the Bears locker room like him. And I kind of feel like he's got an awesome arm, so much talent and everything like that. But I think he's going to be the next Jeff George. So much talent, played in the league for about 10, 15 years, no Pro Bowls. He may have a couple of really good years there, throw up a lot of stats. Again, Jeff George had a really good year or two here with the Falcons, had some really good year with the Vikings, had some success with the Raiders, maybe a little bit with the Colts, but like you were always left like, man, could you just get your head out of your ass? And he never could. And I think that's kind of going to be the case with Caleb Williams, unfortunately. Unless Ben Johnson's the next Kyle Shanahan or the best offensive mind of the last 15 years, I just don't think going to the Bears is where you need to go. If I were him, you see what other jobs open up. I would run from Detroit, Michigan to Cincinnati, Ohio if the Bengals job came open. I would take that job immediately. I wouldn't even think twice. And I don't care that Mike Brown would sell his own kidney to make $5. I don't care that the Blackburns are cheap too. Katie Blackburn gets a $10 haircut. Like I don't care. Like go to the Bengals because Joe Burrow's there. Because Joe Burrow's a dude. People like him. Joe Burrow's played great. The Bengals have not been good, but again, like I don't want to make this about Caleb Williams or anything like that, but I have major concerns about them, and they've been validated the last 2 years for me. And as far as it is with Drake May, I'm going to give him a little more credit. I felt that like he was going to be too passive. I felt like he was going to be too happy and let a terrible franchise eat him alive. That's not the case. I think eventually they're going to have to move on from Gerard Mayo. I think that they're in a position where like they're probably going to get Travis Hunter. I think that's the play they get. Put him at receiver, put him at cornerback, give them some juice. Really just kind of build it around this young core and then get a coach who's actually worth a damn in 2 or 3 years and see what happens. Maybe Gerard Mayo can grow into it. If not, go get somebody else. At that point, I mean, I hate to say it, Zach Robinson played for the Patriots, and he might be the guy at that point. So if he goes to the Patriots to take over in 27, I mean, that team could be pretty good. But the Patriots, it was always going to be a down year for them. They were like one of 8 teams, like they've got no chance to make the playoffs whatsoever. The Bears, people say like, oh, they're duking out with like the Falcons and the Bucks and whomever for like the last spot in. Atlanta's lived up to expectations. Chicago's been a sad bag of crap. Yeah, that team's going nowhere. And then finally, we got the 2 guys who haven't played very much. We got Michael Penix Jr. with the Falcons, who's made 1 start, got a win, came in some garbage time, I think, versus the Seahawks and the Broncos. A couple of other instances maybe throughout the year. He's played about 3 to 5 games, if you will. And then obviously J.J. McCarthy has been hurt. He got a meniscus injury. I think that was lingering from his days at Michigan. And he got hurt after the first preseason game versus the Browns. So he hasn't had anything this year. I'm going to try to say this objectively as I possibly can. In a way, I'm glad that Penix got the opportunity to start this year because you're sitting there, you're thinking like, oh, it's going to be the next Jordan Love. It's Jordan Love. It's going to be Jordan Love. Yeah. That might be 1-1. Like the day and age of the Packers, like drafting quarterback, holding him for 3 years and having him ready to go, like Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, that's over. Like this is kind of going to be more like, the Packers trading for Brett Favre. They had Don Majkowski out there, and he was great. He got hurt, and then Favre went in there, and the rest is history. Mahomes was backing up Alex Smith for a year. He played that one game when the Chiefs have already clinched versus the Broncos and looked pretty good, and then eventually took over and won MVP next year. Not saying that Michael Penix Jr. is going to do that, but eventually with the Ravens, it was Joe Flacco's team in 2018, and then eventually Lamar Jackson took over. I mean, Dak Prescott's different. But like just being able to have him out there getting reps when it matters is great. It is interesting. Like we had this same issue with Desmond Ridder with Marcus Mariota. We were waiting, seeing like there's an idea like we don't know if he can play. We don't know if he's ready for this. He played at the G5 level as opposed to the Power 4 level. And but I think we've all seen Penix play at a very high level for Washington the 2 previous years, and we saw him have a really great year during COVID at Indiana. In 20, I think he got hurt afterwards, but transfer. The point is like we've seen enough out of Penix to know that he could do this. I don't know what the ceiling is. I don't know how long of a career he's going to have because he is older. But I will also say though that like he didn't look afraid when he was out there. He looked like he was ready for the opportunity. I feel like he was ready weeks ago, and the Falcons just waiting for a turn of misfortune to potentially go there. I don't know where he's going to finish with the top 6. Like, I don't know if this is going to end up being like the 1983 quarterback draft class where you have 3 all-timers and Dan Marino, John Elway, Jim Kelly. A guy who took a team to the Super Bowl, Tony Easton, another Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in Ken O'Brien, and a really good analyst in Todd Blackledge. I don't know how this all shakes out, but like of these 6, like 2 or 3 are going to be really good. 2 or 3 are going to be like okay, and 1's probably going to bust, maybe 2. We don't know how this goes. And then finally going on to J.J. McCarthy. Again, I've been wrong about the Vikings every step of the way. I do not trust Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I kind of feel he's lucked his way into this season. I did not think Darnold was going to be this good. I kind of thought he was shot after the Jets, but that's what the Jets do to people. They make you want to give up on life in football. That's what they do just in the season. And it's over for them in 2 weeks. And hadn't made the playoffs since I had a beard or since I had long hair or since I was still in college. But McCarthy, I think he's like going to be a better version of Brock Purdy, maybe. But you trade up to get him. Maybe Purdy should have gone higher than the last pick of the 2022 NFL draft. Probably should have been the first quarterback taken in all retrospect, although Malik Willis has looked pretty good backing up Jordan Love there in Green Bay. What are the Titans doing? Anyway, my biggest take here is I think the Vikings reached on McCarthy. He had the least amount of starting experience of any of these 6 quarterbacks. Like I said, Daniels, Nix, Penix started for several years. Then May and Williams, like they were starters like pretty much right away as a freshman. Started a lot of games as sophomores and juniors, and they banked up enough ready to go. McCarthy didn't play much as a true freshman, kind of split time a little bit. Eventually took over for Cade McNamara there in Michigan, and then played for a team that could drive itself there in Michigan with a great defensive line and running game. He was raw. He's a 5-star talent coming out of Greater Chicago, played at the IMG Academy. He's got the knee injury. I know he's cool, calm, and collected and everything like that, but there's a better version of him in college already. He's coming back for another year, and that's Drew Aller at Penn State, who I would say right now, if your team gets a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft, Drew Aller's at the top of my board. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU is pretty good, but he could fall back. We'll see what happens with Arch Manning. I believe he's not going to come out until 27. That's kind of what the Mannings want to do, make sure their sons, get 4 years in school before they go pro. I still don't see it with McCarthy. Maybe he can really good. I know he can throw it really hard, but no touch, running around a lot. Maybe he can make it work, but like there's just something about him where I'm like, this is probably the one that like I think him and Williams are probably the two they're going to bust. And I'll just leave it at that. And then finally, we're going to move on to our last topic here I kind of did this last time. All I went for Christmas is blank. So I did this with Scott Rogist. All I went for Tishmas is blank. Yeah, we had that to make fun of the Giants and the Falcons together, but there's obviously maybe I could do all I went for Quinmas with Dan Quinn, or all I went for Harris is blank. It doesn't matter with whatever that is. But so last week I said that the 2 things that I wanted for Christmas was Raheem Morris to be coaching with confidence and a home playoff game. I've sad about it. I've been a boy this year. I don't know if I've been a good boy or a bad boy, but I've been a boy. I've been a man. I've been a 35-year-old man. 2 years removed from my Jesus year. Doing this podcast from my sister's childhood bedroom, because that's how it goes. Hopefully the glare is not too bad. I really just want the Falcons to win 2 more games so they can have a home playoff game. I don't care if we lose 51-3 at home. I want to have my team in the playoffs. I want to have my team being worth a damn on Sundays. Again, I'm a Georgia alum, so my Saturdays are like, we're winning every game. I go in every game thinking that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to win beat everybody except Alabama, and then I just freak out. I expect Georgia to compete for national championships, make the playoff every year, win 10 or more games every season. With the Falcons, I'm like, just don't embarrass me. It's kind of been that way since 28-3, in all honesty. I had a lot of. I thought the 2017 season was a lot of fun too. 2018, things kind of didn't go their way, and then it kind of got progressively worse. I'm really thankful that we finally we're not going to be 7-10 for the 4th year in a row, because we won 8 games. We got as many wins as Deion Sanders has toes. But I really don't want us to lose our final 2. I really don't want us to be 9-8 and miss out. I mean, at this point, like, we're not going to be picking inside the top 8. Like, the opportunity to draft a Michael Penix Jr., Bijan Robinson, a Drake London, a Kyle Pitts is gone. You're looking kind of more like, I don't know, looking maybe JTT of Ohio State or Jack Sawyer, Captain Jack Sawyer, maybe they become available. I think that'd be great. Getting either of those pass rushers from Ohio State would be phenomenal for this team. Maybe you go get a Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Maybe Malachi Starks plays safety or something. Just kind of go. I would go defense with the first pick, whoever that may be. But we'll get there when we get there. All I want for Christmas is 2 more wins. Beat the Commanders, beat the Panthers, go to the playoffs, and hope you don't embarrass yourself for the Vikings or Packers. Okay, this was the Blog and Dirty podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me here on Christmas Eve. I think I'm so glad I didn't say New Year's Eve today. It's been crazy. Trying to get the lighting right. There's a blinding light right here, right now. So I'm gonna have like seeing spots later after today. Everybody, my family and my girlfriend's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't see out of my right eye." But that's not going to stop me from hanging out with y'all, bringing you guys the goods about the Falcons, the NFL at large, and the most one of a kind podcast here on the Minute Media Network with Fansided. Obviously, Fall Start's kind of its own little thing, but we're hopefully to kind of get this part of it too. Also, apparently, I'm a TikTok star now. Yeah, yeah. My girlfriend asked me to do a video about thoughts on the Real Housewives, and I came up with a theory about the type of women that are on the show, and I think there are more people who have watched that video than them live in Marietta, Georgia. So it's been insane. So we've done some follow-ups. No sequel is as good as the original, but it was great. Yeah. So this is the Blog and Dirty podcast. Be sure to watch, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can read all of my work on fanside.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Bueller118. You can follow Blog and Dirty at Blog and Dirty. You can go to YouTube. It's Blog and Dirty at Blog and Dirty FS at Blog and Dirty FS. Eventually, I'm going to figure out how to say everything at the end of the show. I don't have it figured out quite yet. Be sure to read everything there at Blog and Dirty, fansided.com, anywhere in the Fansided network. Last thing, this has been a fun season. This hasn't been easy. Try to bring you guys the best stuff I can do once a week. Hopefully we can expand this to more shows during the week, really build this thing up in the offseason, have a really good 2025 where our team's kicking ass, the show's kicking ass, and y'all are kicking ass. But I want you guys to be safe, spend a lot of time with your family, no matter, who you're celebrating with, what you're celebrating with. This is a time to be thankful and appreciative for all the good things we have in our lives. Be safe out there. Don't do anything stupid tonight. People out there love you. I love you. And we love you a lot too. We love the Falcons. And this was the Blog and Dirty podcast. Merry Christmas.